a really good question. I've never heard of it.
Something about what you're allowed to say, I guess.
I have something to do with what you're taught. I don't feel like this.
If I had to guess, I would say something about the way that people interact with other people.
Like, off the top of my head, I have no idea what that is.
Talking about like different rules and how they affect like workplaces or careers or something.
A lot of people don't know what verbal protocol analysis is. This video is to help teach you what a verbal protocol analysis is and how to use it. Please feel free to pause and rewind this video to optimize your learning experience. Verbal protocol analysis, also known as VPA, is a psychological research method used to give insight on participants' psychological processes. It can also be used by ergonomists to closely examine a task. A verbal protocol analysis requires the participant to verbalize their thoughts as they complete a task. These verbalizations are then transcribed, coded, and analyzed. Such a tool is valuable in ergonomics because it reveals elements of a task that may not otherwise be identifiable through interview or through simple observation of the task. Revealing these unidentified elements allows the ergonomist to implement strategies to increase efficiency or safety. The continuous and informal nature of speaking while completing a task prevents the participant from overthinking what they will report, and thus increases the accuracy of the information. So, there are two different types of verbal protocol analysis, concurrent and retrospective. Concurrent is when the participant verbalizes their thoughts throughout the task. Retrospective is when the participant verbalizes their thoughts after the task. Concurrent has more advantages over retrospective because the participant is verbalizing their thoughts as they happen. This allows information to be far more accurate. Retrospective requires the participant to verbalize their thoughts within 5 seconds of completing the task. Otherwise, problems will persist due to memory. The participant will be aware that they completed the task, however will be unable to explain to the researcher what they were thinking while completing the task.
The VPA is a valuable tool in ergonomics. It allows you to closely examine a process and identify hidden issues or areas within the process where changes can be made. These areas may be key for optimizing efficiency and improving safety. As I have previously mentioned, a lot of the information revealed in VPA is not collectible through observation or other means of data collection. For example, the VPA might reveal that the individual is not engaged in the task and their attention is elsewhere, or that they do not have adequate information on how they should be completing the task. Both of these examples have obvious consequences that can be easily avoided once identified. Not only is verbal protocol analysis very easy to use, it also has a lot of advantages. It's rich in quantity and context. It comes from the primary source coming right from the person, so it gives the interviewer a lot to go off of. It can be performed in the person's natural environment, so and they can film a person doing anything pretty much anywhere. Sequence of activities. It's very good at following people as they do stuff in sequential order, instead of breaking them down into just their primary steps. An insight into cognitive processes. It gives the interviewer a very good idea of what is going on in the person's brain as they're doing these steps. Validity and reliability. In terms of the validity of verbal protocol analysis, there is debate over the relationship between verbalizations and the context of cognition. Consideration must be given to the fact that while the think aloud helps to tap into the context of consciousness, it cannot tap into cognitive processes that never reach consciousness. Simply, there are brain processes that fly under the radar and go unnoticed. Therefore, we are unable to verbally transcribe them. With that being said, verbalizations reflecting the context and outcomes of thinking are argued to possess theoretical validity. Reliability. Reliability is achieved by reproducing the study in hope of achieving similar results. One way to achieve reliability is to have a second set of raters do a blind condition, which they are unaware of the previous raters encoding. The new raters would follow the same procedure employed by the original raters. The dual encoding of the same analysis can be correlated to reveal whether or not the two groups of raters have the same results. Therefore, with continued testing, this yields similar results, reliability can be achieved.
Steps of a verbal protocol analysis. There are no hard and fast rules to design in a VPA, but there are a few steps that are general guidelines that most practitioners follow. There are 9 steps that are commonly used to complete a VPA, starting with the device of a scenario and ending with the analysis of the structure of the encodings. Step 1. Device a scenario. The first step is quite simple but lengthy. It is to devise a scenario that will be used. This process usually involves setting a very specific task or a test scenario. What will be observed and under what conditions. It is very important to be specific in the design of the test scenario to make sure that the observation is representative of what the client wants. In other words, the main goal of this step is to set guidelines on what the experiment is going to be. Step 2. Instruct and train the participants. The second step is to instruct and train the participants. After participants are chosen, it is important to make sure that they know exactly what to do. Standard instructions and training should be provided to them. The experimenter should inform them with what they should talk about. It is important for the participants to understand that they need to keep talking even if some things might seem unimportant to them. During this step, it might be valuable to take the participants through a practice session, where the observer will make comments and suggestions on their performance. This is a step where the observer will tell the participants if they are doing something wrong and if they are doing something right. The participant will then be accustomed with the type of interactions the observer is looking for. Step 3. Record the scenario. The third step is probably the most important, as it is the step where the recording is done. This stage consists of taking the participants through the real scenario while the experimenters are recording. Different methods are used to record the experiments. Some researchers might choose to simply use a voice recorder, while some might choose to use video cameras. The minimum requirement would be to use audio recorders to make sure that everything said by the participants is captured. On the other hand, the use of video cameras has been found to be very helpful to experimenters. Sometimes multiple cameras are used because an additional camera provides an automatic backup in case of battery or other equipment failure. Some researchers might go as far as using eye tracking devices that will inform them of how the system is used. Step 4. Transcribe the verbalizations. The fourth step is the transcription of the recordings, where the experimenter will take the recordings, listen to them, and put it in written form. Many observers will use spreadsheets to make this process simpler. The rate of verbalization can easily achieve 130 words per minute, making this task a very lengthy process. Researchers will usually listen to a section of speech, pause the audio recording, note the time, and write it down. Fortunately, this task can usually be carried out by less skilled research assistants that are provided with glossary of domain of relevant terms. Step 5. Encode the verbalizations. The fifth step is the encoding of data, a very complex and important stage. This part is the categorization of what was recorded. The first part of this step is to decide whether to encode words, word senses, phrases, sentences, or themes. If the researchers decide to encode words, the occurrence of certain words will be encoded. For word senses, words with multiple meanings will be encoded. They might choose to encode short phrases that constitute a semantic unit, or to encode what particular sentences refer to or express. The encoding of the meanings of particular phrases or sentences into shorter thematic units is another option. A protocol analysis based on themes provides the richest and most flexible source of data. The second part of this stage is to establish a conceptual framework for the encoding scheme. It involves attempting to ground the encoding scheme according to some established theory or approach. This will help giving some degree of validity to the encoding scheme because it is measuring verbalizations according to a theoretical background. The next step is to devise encoding instructions, highly defined written instructions for the encoding scheme to ensure intra-rater reliability. The final part of this fifth step is to complete the encoding. Many good computer programs exist to help during this task. Step 6. Devise other data columns. After transcribing the verbal data against a time index and having encoded the themes, the final part of the worksheet consists of other data columns. This is a chance to note any mitigating circumstances that may have occurred during the trial and that may have affected the verbal report. At this stage, it also may be helpful to note different stages of task enactment, or to tie up eye tracker data with the verbal report using separate worksheet columns as required. Step 7. Establish inter-rater reliability. The seventh step is the establishment of inter- and intra-rater reliability, a vital step in order to establish the validity of coding scheme. It is especially important to establish the validity of inter-rater reliability when using themes, as themes rely on shared meanings. An analysis will reveal if these meanings are in fact shared. Many techniques exist to help determine reliability for both intra-rater and inter-rater. Step 8. Perform a small-scale pilot test. The 8th step is to perform a small-scale pilot study to test the protocol analysis procedure. It will demonstrate whether the verbal data collected is useful, the encoding system works, and if reliability is satisfactory. This step also offers a chance to refine the procedure and return to step 1 to conduct the final study. Step 9. Analyze the structure of the encodings. The 9th and final step is to analyze the structure of the encodings. It is time to analyze the results of the content analysis. From this point on, the analysis will proceed in relation to the research question at hand, the actual topic of the study. All analysis will need to sum up the responses given in each encoding category.
The job of a grocery store worker involves lifting a variety of different materials. Against popular belief, injuries from lifting can result from more than just lifting heavy objects. Injuries from lifting can result from lifting an object above shoulder height, below mid-thigh height, lifting objects of an awkward size, shape, or weight, and lifting objects too far away from the body. We are going to be looking at lifting objects below mid-thigh height. After researching the average individual's lifting technique, we found common problems resulting in injury. Through the use of verbal protocol analysis, we can identify elements of the lifting procedure that can be changed to optimize the efficiency of the lift and increase safety, thus decreasing the probability of injury. In order to do this, we have asked a participant to complete the lifting procedure and verbalize their thought process as they do so.
Step 1. Devise a scenario. It is hypothesized that the techniques used to perform tasks involving lifting throughout the employee's shift may be the source of increased injuries and/or claims within the workplace setting. A sample of participants will be observed while picking up a box and placing it on a given surface. This will allow us to determine how participants interact with the box and the techniques they use to perform. It will also allow us to determine why problems may occur that could lead to possible injury.
Step 2. Instruct and train the participants.
So your task is going to be to pick up a box from ground level and place it on a shelf beside you. While you're doing this task, simultaneously you'll need to verbalize your thought process. I will be watching you complete the task, but I won't be interacting with you. After the task, I'm going to ask you a series of questions regarding the task. Do you have any questions?
Are we going to go through a practice session before we go, or?
Yeah, so after this, we will go through a few trial runs until you get the hang of it, and then we'll go through the protocol analysis.
Step 3. Record this scenario.
I'm bending over to get the box, trying to keep my knees bent, lifting up slowly, trying to keep it close to my body, just turning, moving over, and putting it on the table.
Bending down slowly to pick up the box between my legs because it's more comfortable that way for me. I have my hands on both sides, trying to keep it close to me so I have better balance. I'm going to turn and put it on the table here and set it down slowly.
So I'm going to pick up this box right here, so I'm going to bend over. I'm going to grab the box and drag it over here. Put my hands on the sides and just straighten out my back. I will lift the box as hard as I can, turn around.
Step 4. Transcribe the verbalizations. Creating a spreadsheet will be a good way to transcribe for this task of verbalizations. Since the overall task was fairly fast-paced, we can use a time index of 2-second increments for the rate of verbalization. We recorded the appropriate time intervals for each verbalization demonstrated during the task. While transcribing, we paused the recording of the participant at each point he or she finished a section of speech, whether it was a brief sentence or a phrase. Then we noted the time and subtracted 2 seconds, then typed the verbalization. Step 5. Encode the verbalization. After transcribing the verbalizations, we will now devise a specific encoding description that will allow for the maintenance of inter-rater reliability. Since the process of the task was quite short, we will encode for the occurrence of the word bent. Since it has been insinuated that injuries more often occur at the period that the individual is bending and beginning to lift the designated item, we can then allow for a degree of validity for our research question. In other words, we are analyzing specifically for the cause of injury occurrence with lifting. After devising the encoding instructions, we can then place our results through a specific computer program for our analysis. Step 6. Devise other columns. Through a secondary chart, we were able to demonstrate the limitations of the study and pinpoint where these problems occurred. As the table describes, problems seem to occur near the beginning of the task when the individual first began to pick up the designated box. As described afterwards as a tension in the lower back, this limitation seemed to occur due to the initial lifting position the participant placed themselves in before lifting, whether it was due to straight legs or a hunched back. As they began to straighten their back or raise to a higher level, this difficulty in lifting seemed to dissipate. Step 7. Establish inter-rater reliability. With the help of our computer programming, we can establish a degree of inter-rater reliability by comparing all of the observations that were recorded and encoded by each researcher earlier in the analysis. This will allow us to ensure that the information being collected is accurate amongst all team members. Step 8. Perform a small-scale pilot test. This pilot test will be used to test if our verbal data collected is usable, whether our encoding system will work, and that our reliability is satisfactory. Step 9. Analyze the structure of the encodings. Now that we have completely finished encoding, we are able to analyze the results for any similarities. We can then, after this point, make recommendations to the company for any possible changes to occur. Many participants seem to have issues lifting during the initial stages due to a poorly established stability or trying to lift with a higher center of gravity. It would be recommended to the employers to designate proper training shifts upon hiring new employees before they begin to work. These training shifts should be used to demonstrate and teach the proper technique of approaching and establishing an initial strong center of gravity before beginning to lift designated packages.
We hope you enjoyed our training video and learned something about VPA and are able to apply it to your everyday life. Thanks for watching.